His name is Alan Anderson. He lives in Northfield, Minnesota. He's been a Rotarian down there for many years. He has a Bachelor of Science degree in Wildlife Science and Management from 1972. He got that. He was in the St. Cloud Army National Guard for 6 years. He was in the Boy Scouts of America, retired in 2012 after serving 34 years in that organization. He took an online course from MIT for the science of climate change, and he's done many talks on that to over 180 churches, schools, businesses, and financial institutions about climate change. So again, he was unable to make it here today, but he'll be doing his presentation online. So please welcome Alan Anderson from Northfield, Minnesota.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Alan.
And if I can have a screen share opportunity.
You should be able to screen share.
And let's see if I can unscramble this. All right.
Looks good.
Very good. Thank you. So I was really hoping to be there in person this morning, but I thought since I live in Northfield, it would be a long commute on snowy roads through rush hour. So I thought I'd try to do it this way. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I'd like to go through this presentation and then have time for Q&A at the end. So as we go, if you jot down questions you might have, I'd appreciate that. As many of you know, Rotary is a fantastic organization, and for a long time we had 6 major focus areas, and you can see them listed there, and they're all critically important work. But now we have a 7th area of focus, and that is because the 6 areas of focus are all at risk from climate change. And so by unanimous vote of the board and the trustees, we have a new one, protecting the environment, and in it is a very strong challenge to us Rotarians to take action on climate. And just backing up a moment to some of the basic science, I think we all learned in high school about the greenhouse effect, and that sunlight comes in through the greenhouse layer as shortwave radiation hits the ground, is changed to long-wave infrared radiation, which gets trapped by the greenhouse layer going out. And this is a very good thing, because if we did not have the greenhouse gases, the Earth would just be a frozen rock. So the greenhouse effect is very good. Unfortunately, like so many things in life, too much of a good thing becomes a bad thing. As we dig up and burn ancient fossil fuels and add now some 30 billion tons of CO2 a year into the atmosphere, the greenhouse gas layer gets thicker, more outgoing radiation is captured, and we're heating up the lower atmosphere. So more CO2 means more warming. And over the many years, we started more accurately measuring atmospheric CO2 on a mountaintop in Hawaii back in 1958. And here you can see the steady rise of CO2 in the atmosphere. And now we're at we're at about 422 parts per million now. And paleoclimate scientists, using many different means, but especially Antarctic ice drill cores, have estimated that we have not been this high in some 3 million years. And some folks have said, well, the climate has always changed. It's probably just a natural cycle. But again, from those studies of Antarctic ice cores, where they could parse out the CO2 and oxygen levels and all kinds of other things from the air trapped in the ice, they were able to map out 800,000 years of CO2 in the atmosphere. And that's the graph you see here. And for those 800,000 years, it was never above 300 parts per million. But then we started getting serious about burning fossil fuels. And you can see where we have risen today. And that is far, far outside any natural cycle that we've had before. And in the mid-80s, NASA scientists started warning us about the problem of warming up our atmosphere abnormally. And back in the mid-80s, they projected the red, the orange, and the gray lines in scenarios A, B, C, depending upon how much CO2 we pumped into the atmosphere. And at the time, skeptics said, we're not going to be warming, we're going to be cooling, or it's too complicated to even be predicted. But now you see the blue line is the actual temperature record. And then you can see where 2024 ended with the star. And you'd have to say, well, the NASA scientists were absolutely correct. The more CO2 we put up, the hotter it's going to get. And every 4 years, our federal government does a national climate assessment. And you can see here the 13 federal agencies, including defense and commerce and energy. And the macro conclusion is climate change is happening. It's primarily caused by CO2 emissions from burning fossil fuels. It's basically irreversible because of the length of time CO2 stays in the upper atmosphere. And it's very serious. And we need to act now to protect future generations. And of course, as we warm up the whole planet, the ice is melting everywhere except in the very heart of the Antarctic. And sea levels are rising both from melting ice and from thermal expansion of the water as the oceans get warmer. And you might recall from last summer that the oceans hit an all-time record high for heat content. Never been this warm before that we know of, and it's causing all kinds of problems, especially for coral reefs. But as sea level rise, coastal cities like Norfolk, Virginia, and Miami Beach are already having serious problems. It's called blue sky flooding. When the sun and the moon line up for a king tide, salt water boils up the drain pipes and floods the streets with salt water. And that is never going to be better than it is now. It's only going to be getting worse. And property values are being negatively impacted there now. 22, 3, and 4 were just, the news was filled with climate disasters. And if you watch the evening news, as I do, almost every night it seems like the newscasters leading off with some destructive storm here in the US, far more than we used to have. And those storms are getting extremely expensive. This is by decade the number of billion-dollar events and the cost of those billion-dollar events in inflation-adjusted dollars, so comparing apples to apples. And you can see that that's a trend line that we don't want to stay on. And that trend line does not even include the slow, steady rising sea level, which scientists tell us will probably be the single most expensive part of climate change as whole cities get in trouble. So scientists are telling us that if we continue to pump CO2 into the atmosphere, temperatures will continue to rise, storms will get ever increasingly more negative, and it will impact people absolutely everywhere. I have to wait for it. That's kind of a cute little thing, but if you look down the lists on the two sides, you'll see that all of those things have happened before. The thing about climate change is that it's making them all much worse, and they will continue to get even worse until we bring down carbon emissions. And this is a sobering graph up to date from NOAA and others showing the rise of global average temperatures, with 2023 and 4 being the highest. Actually, they estimate now in the last 100,000 years. And if you ask yourself, can my kids and grandkids stay on this trend line and have a good future? I think the answer is clearly no. We have to get off this trend line. And when you think of all of the other wonderful good things that Rotary does in the world and our other 6 focus areas, it's all at risk from rising temperatures, rising oceans, and ever more violent weather. So on that trend line, it kind of guarantees disaster for today's children unless we get off the trend line. I think if you have followed the news about climate change, you know that there was a huge push to try to keep us under an increase of 1.5 degrees C, and we may already be there. And climate scientists are telling us if we pass 2 degrees, plus 2 degrees C, and the global average temperature, that will be catastrophic for crop failures, of every bad thing that's happening now times 10. We need to get off this trend line if we care about our kids and grandkids. And there's a lot of good things happening, but they're not happening fast enough. Where we really need to be on these many different scenarios is in the light green scenario at the bottom, keeping us below 2 degrees for sure. But we're not currently on that trend line, and we need much more will and effort. So how does all this tie into Rotary? Well, climate change is happening, and that's the truth. It's unfair to everyone. And if we work to help fix it, that'll build goodwill and be beneficial not only to everybody now, but to all future generations. And we Rotarians don't avoid tough issues. We roll up our sleeves and work to tackle them. If you go to the Rotary International website and you click on Our Causes, you see that protecting the environment is one of the 7 now. And if you click on that, you see climate change, among other things, with a challenge to all of us to tackle it. And within that, protecting the environment, there are 2 of several targets that are specifically talking about climate change and asking us Rotarians to support solutions that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So in a macro summary, rising CO2 and other greenhouse gases are the key problem. And as people who we've built a tremendous society and a successful world burning fossil fuels, they have been a good thing. But again, too much of a good thing becomes a bad thing. And now we're challenged to transition to better, cleaner forms of energy. And it's urgent because as we put CO2 into the atmosphere, heat up the global average temperatures, and heat up the oceans, once we finally level off, not pumping more CO2 up there, that'll probably be the new normal climate for about 1,000 years, because it takes the oceans so long to cool again and the CO2 in the atmosphere to degrade. So our world and our children's world at risk. The good news is there are real solutions, and Rotary can help. Some of that good news, almost all the countries in the world acknowledge that this is a problem and are committed to reducing CO2, although they're not doing a very good job yet. Some countries are doing a pretty good job. Renewable energy, clean energy is advancing at a pace that's about 10 times faster now than new fossil fuel sources. And solar energy is now the cheapest way to put in new energy for people. And XL Energy, a major supplier for not only Minnesota, but 8 other states, has pledged 80% renewable electricity by 2030 and 100% by 2035, actually, now they've said. And they're doing that because they know it's good business and it has to be done. China and India, 2 of the biggest emitters, are rapidly deploying wind and solar. And China deployed more renewables last year than the rest of the world combined. They have a lot of problems. They're burning a lot of coal, but they get it. And they're actually outpacing everyone in the addition of renewables. And we need to remember, too, that in the US, we're still the largest per capita CO2 emitter by far. And the world needs our role modeling in this challenge. Some more good news. Renewables are the cheapest. You can see how they've been falling. And solar and onshore wind, the 2 cheapest sources, why pay more? We should be doing everything we can to transition to them, and it would be saving everybody money in the long run. And there are tremendous numbers of renewables in the pipeline. And you can see there the different colors. Offshore wind on the East Coast, light blue dots is on land wind, orange is solar, and green is batteries. And there's almost as much either built and waiting in the queue to be hooked up or being built now as we already have. If we could hook all that up, we would double the amount of renewables currently online. So Rotary's good work in the world, all the positive stuff that we've achieved, including our incredible work on polio, these are all actually at risk of being reversed due to climate change, disruptions, crop failures, migrations. And we Rotarians don't ignore problems. We go after them. We've got global reach, credibility, social capital. We know how to do things. We need to take on this challenge just as the 7th area of focus has challenged us to do. And working to stop the humanitarian crisis caused currently and in the future by climate change would help probably more people than anything we could do. And it'll appeal to new, younger Rotarians because they're all worried about, all young people are worried about climate change. And if they see Rotary working on it, it'll attract them to join us. So what could Rotarians do? Well, there are a lot of different things. If you haven't got one already, I would encourage you to start a Rotary Climate Action Team or an environmental club in your club. And I've got a lot of ideas on how you could do that. Consider taking the Global Climate Pledge at that website. And I'll be sending this information to my contacts there so that it'll be available to you. The Global Climate Pledge has been signed by over 700 Rotary clubs across the world, with more signing all the time to take action that we can on this issue. As individuals, consider joining the nonpartisan Citizens Climate Lobby. They work to educate Congresspeople of all political parties on the science and the challenges of climate change. And then Rotary International has an environmental sustainability action group. And I would encourage you to join that. And just by joining and adding your name to the fight, even if you can't be very actively involved, helps. And then as your club considers projects, consider also doing projects that would have an environmental and climate impact, like for a village somewhere that needs electricity, adding solar and batteries for them. And then there's a lot of individual actions that we can all take to lower our own family's carbon footprint. And one of the things to know about that is that a lot of people say, well, what are the things that I can do? And as far as decreasing the burning of fossil fuels, that's mainly burning natural gas in our homes for space heating and water heating. And one of the things that we can do is, when the time is right, usually when your air conditioner or your furnace dies, instead of replacing it with another gas one, replace it with an electric heat pump. And here, even here in cold Minnesota, we now have cold climate heat pumps. 2 years ago, my own air conditioner died. I replaced it with a cold climate heat pump, and it reduced my gas consumption by 80%. I still need a gas furnace, which I just kept for backup on those bitterly cold days, but 80% reduction by replacing an old air conditioner with a heat pump. And then if by chance you personally have solar panels on your home or your business, Rotary now has the Million Solar Panel Challenge and encourages individual Rotarians who have panels to log them towards that million goal, and it encourages clubs to consider adding solar panels in your own town, in a Habitat for Humanity house, or in a project overseas. And there's a lot that we can do. And we can all talk about it. One of the problems is that most Americans almost never talk about climate change. And of course, if we don't talk about it, we don't think about it. And if we don't think about it, we're not doing anything about it. So I would encourage you strongly to learn more about it and talk about it with friends and family and in your club. I have 5 precious little grandkids. These are 3 of them that motivate my work. And I envision them asking me, are you and the other grown-ups taking care of our little blue planet for us kids? And I'd have to say, we're not doing a very good job right now. And I would invite you to imagine your kids and grandkids asking you the same question. When they're grown, we want them to be able to say that my parents and grandparents fought hard to preserve a livable planet for us. Because either we are working to preserve a livable climate for them or we're not. We're all part of the problem. We can choose to be part of the solution. And children everywhere need us to act because their future is literally in our hands. And I would invite you to get involved. Although the media tends to shy away from it because it's not a popular topic, climate change is, in fact, the biggest challenge to our generation. And how will we respond? I ask each of you to get involved in climate action for the sake of your own kids and grandkids and children everywhere. And it's a big problem. Nobody can do everything, but every one of us can do something in this challenge. And with that, I'll go to questions.
Thank you, Alan. Any questions on the floor here?
Thank you for a great presentation. And a year ago, my husband and I put solar panels on our house. My question is, what is that graph behind you?
That one? That's global average temperatures beginning in the 1880s and rising steadily.
Thank you.
I do have one question. You haven't mentioned nuclear power. How does that fit in the matrix?
Good question. Scientists tell us that we need to keep all the nuclear power we've got, and we need to develop more clean, small, modular nuclear, because the challenge is great, the stakes are incredibly high, and we cannot afford to not use any good non-carbon producing energy sources that we can have. And it's important to remember that in France, 80% of all of their electricity comes from nuclear power, and they've never had an accident. Accidents are big, scary. 100 times more people die in coal mines and from black lung disease than have ever died from a nuclear accident. So we need to keep it all straight.
Thank you. Any other questions?
All right, Alan, thank you for your presentation. This is John Channon, by the way. A few years ago, I read a book called Climate Restoration.
Yeah.
And it talked about how net zero emissions was part of the solution, but it also talked about carbon capture.
Yeah.
It talked about the need to also do carbon capture through biomimicry and geomimicry. I noticed I didn't see anything about carbon capture in your presentation. What's this kind of, how does that fit into all of this, or does it?
It does, and again, scientists tell us that we need to get much better about figuring out how to do that. For example, forests naturally capture a lot of carbon every year, and that's a great thing until they burn down. And oceans capture a lot of carbon, and in fact, that's actually another problem. The oceans are increasing in acidity, which is a problem for coral reefs. So there's tremendous money being spent, billions being spent now to figure out how to capture direct air capture out of the air, pump it through big fans, capture the CO2, sequester it. There's, I think, even a more promising research underway right now to capture carbon out of seawater, because an enormous amount of carbon is captured there, and it's much more highly concentrated than in the air. So for the same amount of work, you could capture a lot more carbon out of seawater. And then there are plans, and this comes back to climate restoration. There's experiments going on to actually fertilize sections of the ocean to create more algae where it's pretty thin now. And algae captures carbon, and when the algae dies, it sinks to the bottom of the ocean and is sequestered. So there's a lot of work going on there now. Different successful types of carbon capture are going to be absolutely necessary to preserve a livable future.
Thank you again for all your information to all of us.
And if I could share one more thing, if I can get it up here quick, at the very end, let me share with you my email. It's luckyduck49@gmail.com. And if you'd like our National Academy of Science, only 24 pages long, charts and graphs, layman's terms. It's a fabulous short education on climate change. I'd be happy to send you an electronic copy of that. And I put out a once a month climate update of basically climate in the news that includes good climate in the news. I put that out once a month. If you'd like any of those things, just send me an email and I will be happy to send them to you.
I have one more question if you got a minute. Within the Rotary environment, have you seen some good examples of how they've developed local Rotary environmental action plans and what that might look like?
And if I can just share, there's actually a lot of examples and a lot of clubs working on it now, but the one I'm most familiar with is my own club in Northfield here. We started a climate action team in 2017, and we began first by educating our own club about the science of climate change and the challenges. And then we have presented to some 75 other clubs now around. We partnered with the city of Northfield to install the first 2 public electric vehicle chargers in our downtown. And we have put on a number of electric vehicle events to educate the public about EVs. And our current project is to help low-income homeowners in Northfield to get an energy audit and do the weatherization of their home, because this hits a whole bunch of our areas of focus, but it helps low-income families. They save money, they reduce their emissions, and they have more money to spend on food and et cetera for their families. So we're in the initial stage of this. We've got about 10 families that we're working with right now. And we hope to, as we learn all that we're discovering that there are a lot more agencies that have money for this, but a lot of them weren't talking to each other. And so we're bringing money that was already there to the table to connect it to the families. So and then we also worked with the city to commit to make a climate action plan. And then some of our climate action team members served on the city's climate action plan advisory board, which helped develop the plan that the city has now adopted. So there's a lot of things that you can do locally, and that's just a short list of things that people are doing.
Thank you, Alan. Wonderful presentation, if a bit sobering. As I think about this, and what you've talked about and some of the other things we've heard, is that I think not one of us is going to solve this, but maybe just to have an awareness so that one makes these life decisions, that one puts it through the test of, is it good for the environment? So if you're buying a car, you get a good mileage? If you're buying a new furnace, do you have the best one available that will reduce CO2 emissions? So thank you so much for your presentation. I look forward to maybe seeing you in person here at some point, and maybe some of us can come down to Northfield and see what you're doing down there, because it sounds like good work.
Sure, and if any of you are going to the May 2-3 conference at Mystic Lake, I'll be there.
Okay, well, we'll look you up. So thank you very much.
But thank you.
All right, get you out of here a couple minutes early. Have some conversations maybe before whatever you're going to do for the day. So go out and be the magic of Rotary.
Great presentation, great presentation. Have a good day, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Alan.
All right, John.
All right, Desmond, you take care. Send the warmth up, please.
Yes, I will. All righty.
See you later, Janie.
Yeah, John. Say, I have to get your phone number, so maybe you could text it to me. I tried to call you when the ice went out, but I had the wrong number.
That's all right. I could see that. So,
Oh, okay. Thanks.
all right. We'll see you.
All right, bye.
Bye.